So here we are in Confluence and Microsoft Word and have one of the Maxer Plus service agreements in front of us. I've actually imported the Word document in Confluence and then did a little bit of post-processing just to clean some things up. Like with Integrity, when you import content, it requires that the content be formatted properly, and that really aids in how things get formatted and laid out, specifically with regard to headings and different paragraph markers and things of that nature. So on the left, I've got it in Confluence. On the right, of course, it's in Word. You'll notice that the formatting, for all intents and purposes, is very similar. Because we're in a browser, things may not render the same or always identically, depending on your zoom level and things of that nature. But for all intents and purposes, it's very much the same. Like I mentioned, I made some formatting changes. So in the case of headings and subheadings, I inserted some subheadings, or heading 2, if you will. So in this case, Maxer Plus Services is heading 1. I made the next heading a heading 2. Before it was just standard paragraph content copy. I made it heading 2. And then I've done a little bit of formatting or post-processing on this, but you'll notice that for all intents and purposes, it's very much the same. And that's to be expected. The emphasis with Confluence, as it also is with Integrity, is the copy, the content itself, not necessarily the formatting. We watch a lot of customers spend so much time worrying about formatting and making things appear just right, and less emphasis is placed sometimes on the content. So Jira like Integrity, Confluence like Integrity does the same type of thing. A couple of features to note. When you're in edit mode, and I'm not now, I just hit the scroll up and then the toolbar will pop down. Once you're in edit mode, you'll get a formatting toolbar. Most of the options are intuitive. If you hover, of course, you get a little help text, but most of them are fairly intuitive. This happens to be what's used to apply styles, and the styles are rather limited, just like with PTC Integrity. I feel that's actually a good thing, more so than not. Having too many options, many times we get just caught up in spending too much time on formatting. But needless to say, most of these things are intuitive. I will get out of edit mode here. And now I can either preview. If I had made some changes, I could preview those changes, or I could actually publish my page or publish my updates. And those updates would be then kind of a snapshot of the version, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But before I do that, if others are editing the actual content, you'll actually see the updates happen in real time. It can be a little disconcerting. It's actually a fairly neat feature, but as they're typing, you'll actually see updates on your screen in real time. And so that needs to be factored into any use cases that you might have around multi-editing or document collaboration, if you will. So I'm actually going to close this document, go back into preview mode, talk about a couple of other features. And one more thing about collaboration. You'll actually see an icon up here for some period of time as new users come into the document in an edit mode. You'll see their icon. You can hover over their icon and see who it is. And I may do a quick demo later because I've got a couple of machines here that I can demo that feature and kind of show you how that works. A little bit about document history and things of that nature. This little, I believe it's called an ellipse, but the dots will bring up different properties and features about this document, one of which I just mentioned, which is page history. And when you go into page history, this basically shows all the revisions of the document, and a revision is defined when you actually click the update button. So you can be making updates within a document and not click the update or the save, and the save is either a Command S if you're on Windows, or Control S if you're on Windows, and a Command S if you're on the Mac. And the idea that every time you do that gesture, that actually creates a revision of the document. As you're typing, those changes are in essence saved. And if you close your browser, come back into your browser later into that document, those changes you have made will still be there, but they don't show up actually as a revision, and your edit session can continue. But In each one of these revisions, we can actually view these. So in version 10, I can go in and see what it was as of version 10. I can do some comparisons with current. I can restore this version. I can actually delete versions if I want to. But you kind of get the idea. It's, I think, what you would expect. It's what SharePoint does for all intents and purposes. It's what Integrity does and allows you to do. So it's pretty much as you would expect. It also shows, of course, who created the revision. Other page information about this document. I've got Brian as an editor. I've got myself. I've actually got two IDs. One with my last name spelled R-O-M, which is how it should be spelled, and one as R-U-M, which is how many people spell it. But I was going to use that for some of the multi-editing testing that I will be doing. Another thing, while we look at the document, if I go back into the document itself, while I'm not in edit mode, I can highlight text and two little icons will show up. I have the Jira integration turned on, so I can either add an inline comment, right? And I can save those comments, and comments actually are, call it a light workflow. So the idea would be we're doing some collaboration, we're in a meeting, maybe we're inserting some comments actually in the document, or maybe we're doing that in more of a decentralized manner, and people are collaborating on the content. And as things are addressed, you can actually resolve that. And it will basically take the highlight off. So the other thing you can do within a document is select some text, and the other icon is actually to create a Jira issue. So if you wanted to create a Jira issue for review, respond. That's actually an even better way to assign some tasks to individuals. Now, I'll do more about Jira later, but the idea being this is how you can build in a little bit more comprehensive and complex or sophisticated activities and workflows into a document. And then if I want to, I can actually click, and then it'll take me right into the Jira issue. So very handy as well. So now I'm in another document, and actually I have this same test document opened on two machines, and wanted to show what happens when multiple people are collaborating in the same document. And so I'm going to go to this other machine. What you're going to see on the screen, and that T that you see in the pink down at the bottom, is actually me on another machine editing this document. So as you know, I add some content. This is being done on the other machine. You're actually seeing it in the video, and the video is being recorded on the primary machine, and I'm doing editing on the secondary machine. So the idea here is collaboration is in real time. And I think the most important use cases are editing documents and editing different sections of documents, not necessarily editing in the same paragraph, much less editing in the same sentence. That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But the fact remains that collaborative editing is very, very powerful with Confluence. And another feature which I'm sure you would expect is within an image that you've embedded, and in this case I've embedded an image, you can click on it and then it comes a little hover control that allows you to change a couple of different things, the least of which being a border. If you want a border, the size, you can resize in fixed formats where you can actually type in the height and the height and width in pixels. Or you can go to properties and actually select different effects. I happen to be using a curl shadow on this, but I think you get the general idea. Pretty much as you would expect. You can link an image to other content within a document, or actually in another document if you wish. Very powerful features, most of which you can find in an integrity orientation. But most of the implementation within Confluence is very similar to being, URL references and things of that nature. If you want to insert new images, the simplest thing to do is to just go into Windows Explorer, or in this case I'm on a Mac, so I'm in Finder. Go find something here. I've got a screenshot that's actually a screenshot. Grab something else and then just drag it into your document. It will attach it. Of course, within the document, there's a separate attachment type view, if you will, that shows all of the inserted attached content where you're seeing it in line in this case. And you can resize the content, move the content around interactively as you might expect. Make this a little bit larger. Put a border around it. Makes it very easy. The drag and drop, I think, is the key. Or you can actually import content within the document, import attachments and whatnot, primarily images, PDF images, PDF documents, and then insert them that way. So another thing I'll mention, and it may be a fairly limited use case, I happen to be on an iPhone 6, 6S actually, but a small device, a handheld device, I think categorically would be accurate. And you have the ability of running the desktop version of Confluence and Jira or the mobile version. Now, if you're internally hosting, there actually is an iOS app. It's only for the software as a service of the cloud-based Jira and Confluence. It doesn't work with internally hosted Jira and Confluence, but I'm not convinced that the applications themselves are inherently valuable. And that says more about the value and how well the web versions work. But on the screen you can see the same view that I was showing on my desktop, and I can scroll within the document and see the very same updates. I can go into edit mode and do the very same things that I did before. Now if I switch back to, that's at the top, yeah, here we can switch back to the mobile version. The mobile version, while the UI is simplified and simpler, you don't have the ability to do all of what you need to do. You can add comments and read the document, and that's valuable. Handy when you've only got a finger to work with. But if you actually want to make some changes, if you switch to the desktop version, you have the same abilities that you have on the desktop. And I think this would be more applicable if you're on more of a tablet-style device, whether that be Surface, or Surface is a full-blown Windows PC. An iPad would fall into that category, or any of the Android tablets. You have the full capabilities available to you, and can, as long as you've got connectivity, you can do the same thing as you can do on the desktop. So it's very powerful. I can actually go into edit mode. You have to notice I got an email for some Confluence updates. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later, and that has to do with all of the email notification that's available in Confluence and Jira. And it's what I would say to be very similar to what you would expect from any other commercial off-the-shelf application like Integrity. But you can turn things all the way up so you're getting an email for just about everything that happens, or you can dump things down. So yes, I can go into this document, I can perform edits. It's not necessarily the best experience on a phone form factor, but in a pinch, it will certainly get the job done. And a pinch may be all that you need sometime. Do an update, that'll publish the document, and I'll see it on the desktop. So thought I would show that as well, very handy. I wish I had an iPad to try it out on, because that would be a great interim device. If you're on a train, commuting in the car, or just lying on the couch and you do some document updates. Nice to have a smaller form factor on your desktop computer. All right, so I've got a test document here that I've done some edits to behind the scenes. And a couple of things you'll notice is, first, I've inserted a table of contents at the top of the document, and the numbering on all the headings or the document structure. They all have numbers on them, and they have the embedded or hierarchical numbering scheme. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that was created. It was done through a free add-in, and the add-in applies at the space level. I actually prefer the numbering because it gives you some idea of if you've got a heading 2, other than the font size or the relative font size, you can actually see what it belongs to. Very handy. A couple of other things that I've included here in section 2. I called this section document approvals. It's a block of JIRA issues that's driven by a number of different ways, either a query or you can specifically call out JIRA issues, which is what I've done here, and I'll show you how I created that. Section 3, contributors, is a control, or Confluence calls it a macro, or Atlassian calls it a macro, that includes those people that have actually contributed to content within the document. And I've got both my user IDs, my actual user ID, and then my last name with UM, which is my secondary ID, so I can see what I've done within the document itself. Then you can see in 3.1, these are called user mentions. These are handy because if for whatever reason you want to call someone's attention to either an area of the document or the document in particular, you can include their name. It's called a mention. And you can either type the macro shortcut, which is an @ sign, and you get a list of users on the server that you can then search, or you can actually do it from the toolbar, the editing toolbar. And that's kind of handy too. Anyway, the rest of this is pretty much the same. But the idea here is I'm going to go in and edit this document and kind of work through a couple of the key things. One was the approvals. This is the JIRA issue, so I'm going to take that out and then show you how I did that. So under the Insert More Content on the toolbar, you've got a number of different things here, including other macros that you may have installed that you can search. But these are the handiest ones here. So this one here is the JIRA issue filter. So in this case, I can type in max 10. Notice it picked up from before. In essence, those are the primary keys for the JIRA issues within the Maxer space in JIRA. So max 10, 11, and 12, I know are actually the JIRA issues that I had created specifically for document approvals. And then I can just click insert, and it will actually insert those JIRA issues. Very simple. You can always also do what's called JQL, which is JIRA query language, which is very much like SQL in that I could say, show me all of them, all the JIRA issues that have document approval in their name or something along those lines. Anyway, fairly straightforward to do. Or you can build a query in real time to insert content. Contributors, like I said, this is an actual control. I can actually edit this. In this case, this is the author, so anyone that's authored in the document, you can insert those. Really handy to kind of see who's actually providing content and editing the document. That is dynamic and will update. Like I mentioned, these @ mentions or user mentions, you just type an @ sign, which is the shortcut for pulling up the users from the system. And you can then search for their name, and it will give you the list of individual, like there's Brian's name, or my name, for example, anyone that's in the system. User mentions really more for just sending them an email, and based upon your email rule configurations, they'll get an email for the document itself. Anyway, so that's a little wrap up with some advanced controls that I've inserted in the document. The JIRA issues being one of the more handier things because you may have many documents that have what might be integrity items today or JIRA issues tomorrow. You can include them right within the document. And then what's really handy, like I said, is it will refresh itself, or you can manually refresh the content. It's very powerful in that regard. And then if I click the update, of course it will save that and take us into preview mode. You can see the JIRA issues. You can pop over to the JIRA issue real quick, pop back to your document. You can actually transition some of these things. So if I wanted to go into this one and say, I've actually started, I can say start progress. And then when I back up, I can click refresh, and it will show that it's now in progress.